Biomechanics. What does that mean? Bio, living thing, mechanics, movement. It's movement in a living body. For me, biomechanics plays a huge part in my tool control. You've noticed in this skew video that my tool control is pretty good. When I have proper biomechanics, it allows me to do all of the cuts with success. But when my biomechanics get a little bit sloppy, my tool control suffers. Let me give you a couple pointers on how you can improve your biomechanics at the lathe. Let's take a look at my feet. When I'm standing at the lathe, if I have a wide stance with my toes slightly pointed out, I have more balance. I have a wider base. But if I were to stand with my feet together like this, I have a very narrow base and I have a very narrow movement or narrow pass with the tool that I can make with success. If I'm going to rough a blank into a cylinder or do a long planing cut, I want to have a wide base of support. My toes slightly pointed out at about a 45-degree angle relative to each other, and my knees then can bend to transfer my weight from left to right. If I'm going to do an exercise to practice this and strengthen my legs, I want to be able to lift up one foot and totally rely on my left leg to balance my body and my body weight, and then smoothly transfer my weight to my right leg or my right foot and lift up my left leg. This is a great basic exercise or a way to warm up your legs and get ready to do a planing cut with great success. If I have my feet in a narrow stance, I have a very narrow base with which I can balance. If I go right to left, left to right, my weight transfer is in a very small amount of motion, so I can't expect to be able to do a long planing cut with control. Let's take a look at my knees. When I have that wide stance and my toes slightly out, I can bend my knees and lower my center of gravity. Then I have a lot more control because my muscles are ready to transfer my weight from left to right and right to left. When you're taking a look at my upper body, my knees are bent. I'm not nearly as tall as I normally am when I'm standing up straight. When I'm standing up straight, I'm 6'2". But when I'm crouched down, I've lowered my center of gravity and allowed my base to be wide so that I can move from left to right and right to left with control. Great exercises to see if you can transfer your weight from left to right and right to left, keeping level shoulders, maybe sighting something along the wall that's nice and level. And now with the tool in my hand, I'm going to step up to the lathe, nice compact stance, and I'm going to do the same thing. My knees are bent, I have a wide base, toes pointed out, and now the tool becomes an extension of my core, and my hands are free to do the finessing of introducing the edge and the bevel to the wood. In doing the planing cut, you need to be able to transfer your weight from left to right or right to left. Notice my shoulders and my upper body as I do a planing cut. Making a nice true cylinder. If I don't have a smooth transfer of weight, my tool is going to go up and down into the wood, creating a really undulated surface. Not a smooth cut at all. Let's take a look at the biomechanics in a peeling cut. That was the second cut I introduced with the skew. For a peeling cut, I always take a wide stance so I have a great base. And I'm going to be bending my knees, locking the handle into my hips, and I'm just going to be raising my knees, both simultaneous at the same time. You'll notice my elbows are locked into my core, so I have nice stability. My knees are just bending and extending. As I bend and extend, my shoulders come forward so my head comes up and over the blank slightly. This is what I was talking about with a swan dive. My shoulders and my head come up over the blank. I'm sure you've noticed by now, I adopt a very compact stance. My hands choke up on the tool. My right hand is touching the tool shank as well as the handle, and my left hand is just used for guiding and placing the edge. Many turners will grip on the butt end of the handle. I don't like this approach as much because my wrist, elbow, and shoulder now become extra joints that I have to control. Even if I have really strong hands and really strong arms, my core is so used to balancing my entire body weight, making very small motions and very small movements, those muscles are used to very fine control. If I add my wrist, my elbow, and my shoulder in, those muscles are not used to balancing my weight and making very small motions. As they become fatigued, my arm becomes very loose and shaky. So, a compact stance, choke up on the grip, bring the butt end of the handle into your hip, and now it becomes an extension of your core. And this arm can relax and just steer the bevel. Now your legs and your core become the manipulator of how the tool handle acts. Again, my right hand can completely relax and take a really light grip, just guiding the bevel and the edge to contact the wood. What this translates into is if you do have a catch or a skate, there's very little force into that equation, and the tool will kick back ever so lightly and disengage the edge. It's not a big deal. It becomes a learning experience rather than what I call a PFE, pant filling experience. I'd like to introduce the biomechanics for a paring cut. Now a paring cut, I'll switch my blank out here. A paring cut, remember, is across the end grain fibers. This is one of my favorite cuts to do. It cuts across the end grain and cleans it up so nicely, but it can be a little bit of a crazy cut if you don't have good tool control. If you're fatigued and you adopt this end of the handle grip and your edge wavers, you can go from introducing just the long point to the entire edge in a matter of a moment. That's a really big catch. This is the exact same biomechanics as that peeling cut, that arcing or swan dive kind of motion. So my legs and my core and my body are doing the exact same motion, except my edge is vertical. I'm leading with the long point down, and I'm gliding the bevel that is in contact with the wood. That's what I'm steering. So my hips come over just slightly to angle the tool so that that bevel is steered, and then I do my swan dive. This is a really nice cut to be able to have that control. Again, the same motion as the peeling cut. The greater diameter difference between where you're starting the cut and where you're finishing the cut will determine how dramatic that movement is. The smaller the difference, the less movement in your knees. The larger the difference, the greater the movement in the knees. For the V cut, it's nearly the same motion as the peeling cut and the paring cut. Like the paring cut, I'm going to steer the bevel of the skew. So I'm going to bring my hips to steer that bevel in the direction I want the point to go. Here's perpendicular for the scoring cut that I started the V cut with. All I need to do is shift my hips or my weight towards my left to cut the left side of the V. And the last variable I need to change is I need to twist the skew ever so slightly. I'm exaggerating that rotation a little bit. This would make a wider V than what I've done on this blank. For this blank, vertical edge right here, handle over, edge placement like this. Now all I do to cut the other side of the V, twist the other way, and shift my hips the other direction. As I finish the cut, I'm going to extend my legs and move my hips over so that the edge tracks vertically in the groove. You'll notice also that the shank is perpendicular to the axis of rotation. Remember, that gives me a lot of safety and stability and that edge tracking. Let's take a look at the rolling cut. You'll notice that these cuts are gaining in their complexity. Changing out the blank for the rolling cut is a little bit more complex. Not only do you need to shift your hips as you swing the handle around to track vertically at the end of the cut, you also need to roll or twist your handle. That's where this hand is going to come in with controlling that edge. Remember, the rolling cut is the short point down. Everything else builds on the biomechanics. Wide stance, feet at 45, knees bent to initiate the cut, angled or the handle against your hip, choked up in a compact stance, and extending your legs to come up and finish the cut. That's the rolling cut or beading cut. It's quite a bit more complex biomechanically than the other cuts. Just remember when you're practicing, use a cup drive or some way that it will allow the blank to slip if you get a skate or a catch. Also, remember, every skate, every catch, every little oops is a learning experience. Stop for a moment, take time to understand what's happening at the lathe between the edge and the wood. Turn it by hand if you need to, and go through the motions so that you can get a chance to learn from it. We're going to shift to the most complex cut using the skew. That's the coving cut. The skew really isn't designed for this cut, but with a lot of biomechanical efficiency and understanding how to move, you can pull this one off. I'm going to shift blanks so we can show the coving cut. The coving cut is the most complex because it's a dramatic movement in your hips, twisting the tool just right to maintain bevel contact without scoring the wood with the bevel heel. Not the cutting edge, but the bevel edge that's trailing behind the cutting edge. As I initiate this cut, my wide stance, knees are bent, tool is tied into my core using my hip and a compact grip. I'm going to initiate the bevel contact first with the short point leading the cut. I'm going to rock my hips to the left and the tool tip or cutting edge to the right as I go down through the cove. In addition to the hip action and the opposite action of the tool edge, my hand that has control of steering that bevel and steering the edge is going to do a scooping motion, almost like a backhand with a slice. I'm going to engage the bevel, short point leading the cut, go through the cut, and scoop out. Initiate the cut with a bevel gliding, short point steering the cut, glide and scoop out as you come to the bottom of the cove. Now, there's one more thing that makes this an extremely complex movement. That has to do with what portion of the edge you're using to do the cut. If I were to rotate by hand and do this cut one-handed, just to show you where the shaving placement is, it starts low on the tool. As I scoop towards the middle, it comes to the middle of the edge, and as I go to finish, it comes up high on the edge. I've shown you the basic biomechanics for all 6 cuts that I demonstrated with the skew, going from simplest to more complex. Remember the planing cut, just a weight transfer left to right. A peeling cut, which is really that swan dive action of extending your knees. A paring cut across the fibers, which is very similar to a peeling cut in your biomechanics, but the edge is presented differently. A V cut, which is very similar to the paring cut, except now you introduce an angle to the handle, one side and the other of the V. A rolling or beading cut, which steps up in complexity because now you have this rolling or twisting of the handle as you move your body from left to right or right to left. And the last cut that I just demonstrated, a coving cut, the most complex of them all, because it's an awkward little scissor motion and scooping with your hand at the same time. Have fun practicing all 6 of these cuts. My hope is that the biomechanics that I've introduced to you will give you a different understanding of how to control the tool. It's not just about where the tool meets the wood. It's about how your entire body moves to control that tool and to control the edge and to create nice, smooth, flowing curves, or to create crisp details. But it's all about predictability and building your confidence at the lathe.